Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the first issue of Hot Takes. Alright, if you look at my channel, you'll note that I had this thing I was doing for a while. I was calling it, uh, probably, the political divide. I think I was calling it on YouTube. I was trying to do some very reasoned, rational explanations of liberal points of view, and they just ended up being hot takes about my anger current with the current situation because every morning I'd wake up and there's another scandal where people are completely misrepresenting a liberal position about Donald Trump or his administration um or about some other issue probably related but not directly referencing them. So I ended that because I wasn't able to speak accurately. The point of the political divide was being undermined by that move. Uh, so what I've done instead is um, I've been doing a couple other things. I've never been able to get it to work, and then why don't I just do one dedicated to hot takes? I'm not going to be necessarily accurate. I'm going to be working with less information. I'm going to not necessarily have the best understanding of the law because I'm not going to have researched the law on these subjects. But this is just for me to rant. If people like it, great. If people don't, who cares? Um, so I've got a couple hot takes. Several of them aren't too hot anymore, but I'm going to talk about them anyway. Um, we're gonna start with um, Represented Congressman uh, Gary. Um, he's the guy. He's the guy who made a Twitter, what a lot of people viewed as a Twitter threat to Michael Cohen before uh, the day before his public testimony. His public televised testimony, suggesting that he is unfaithful. He has multiple. Uh, he the congressman referred to them as girlfriends, suggesting a romantic relationship, not just a sexual one, as the word mistress might. Maybe that was him trying to soften the question. But and then reference that his wife he's been lying to, suggesting he's been lying to his wife about them, and questions whether his wife is going to be faithful to him once she finds out everything that the congressman is going to be discussing tomorrow. Um, so this was seen as a massive claim of witness tampering. This is clearly an attempt to intimidate a witness. Was what a lot of people said, and I agree. um, Supported by comments from um, uh, Ken White, a federal defense attorney and former federal prosecutor. He noted that this very well could be, um, because as much as you have some broad leeway in the speech and debate clause for things said on the Senate floor. For instance, had he just popped this out on the Senate floor, he likely would have been entirely protected under the speech and debate clause, which is what a lot of people say that he's protected under. But he did this on Twitter, and that changes a lot of things. Like the question of obstruction in all the various Trump instances, really it comes down to questions of intent. What is the intent of what you're doing? There are a lot of people who say, intent doesn't matter. Well, actually, in these cases, it does, because context matters. For instance, if you've got a friend who's not a criminal, let's say you are a criminal, you have you've already been convicted of lying. You're about to go, and you're about to go talk about the local Don, because uh, that allegory hasn't been used before. And so, and you're about to testify about the actions of the local Don whom you worked for, and was the basis of uh, your previous lies. And you're about to go onto you're about to go in a uh, in a very public hearing and denounce his crimes. When you do that, okay, there. When you do that, if your friend comes up to you and says, "Dude, you've got like a lot of baggage that still hasn't been addressed. Are you sure you want to be going? Are you sure you want to be making this kind of public testimony? Uh, this could expose you. This could expose you further. That's not a that's not necessarily that's not a threat. That's like, dude, are you sure? But if you are the investigator and you're about to and you say that, that raises a lot of red flags, because now the investigator is discouraging you from showing up. He phrased this as testing a witness, not witness intimidation. And there is a line, but one of the key facts is you don't test the witness's integrity by saying, I'm going to be asking you about all your mistresses in when you arrive for your televised testimony. I'm going to be asking you about all of these women who you've been unfaithful to your wife with, and seeing if you've and seeing if you're a truthful man. Well, no, that's very there is very clearly an undercurrent there, that there is a risk. One, proving that he's a liar does nothing. This is the big thing, and this will segue into my second bit. Proving Cohen is a liar is nothing. Means nothing. You had a very good expression of this in the SNL hearing, the SNL version of the hearing. But he's already admitted to being a liar. He started by saying, I lied. I lied a lot. I am taking responsibility for my lies. My lies were done at the direction and in service of Donald Trump. Well, you're a liar. Yes, to protect Donald Trump. Well, we can't trust that you're not protecting Donald Trump, that you're telling us the truth, because you're a liar. Well, I tell lies to protect Donald Trump. If these are the lies I'm telling to protect Donald Trump, imagine what the truth is. And that's kind of that also leads to a bigger point I have whenever we talk about the shifting positions of the Trump administration. Like, they lied, and then they moved to another lie, which, to protect the truth, which is where we are now, which is still not bad. They could have told this initially. They didn't have to tell either, any of the earlier lies, which suggests maybe there's something even worse that's still being covered up. With Cohen, yes, he is a liar, and he lied to protect Donald Trump. You might say that, oh, well, now he's lying to protect himself, except this testimony is nothing, can take him nowhere but down. Like, he's not, we don't, he's not gonna get, he's already been sentenced, he's already going to jail. Maybe he might get parole earlier, but there's this big downside that if he lies and everyone knows about it, he's going to get more charges. And they're going to be exacerbated because now he's lying again. We're seeing that in the Manafort case. So that's I don't buy into that. It was very much witness intimidation. It's about timing. Had he gone onto the floor and started talking about this, and I still don't think it would have served him well because he's a liar. Um, because Cohen is a liar. But if Congressman Geard just chose to sorry, I can't remember his name at the moment. If he chose to do this thing where he upload he proves Cohen is a liar by questioning about him, by testing him, you don't test a witness in investigation. The way you test a witness during an investigation, not a trial, but an investigation, the way you test that witness is you ask him questions about corroboration. You ask him questions which can reveal exculpatory information. Sorry, that's not right. Exonerating information. Or reveal lies in the testimony itself. Because revealing that he's a liar in an investigation, the best that's going to do is throw out what he said, but the problem is that really doesn't, you know, uh, if you look at the boy who cried wolf analogy, um, people stopped believing, they got to the point where they threw out claims of a wolf because this guy always lied about a wolf, and then a wolf showed up. In an in a trial, yes, you can abandon you can throw out those claims of wolf if it's proven that he keeps claiming wolf and there's never a wolf. In a trial, that's a good strategy because we're looking to find, because this is a question of whether or not we're going to find someone guilty. That the evidence of a witness who lies is, very questionable. But if you flip that over, what you end up looking at is a you flip all of that around. What you end up looking at is instead of in this investigation, you don't want to stop there. You're like, all right, this guy can't be trusted, but he's claiming wolf. Well, let's not go full court press here, but let's see if there's anything else that you can corroborate. In the case of wolf, you can send one guy down to the flock and see if there's a wolf. Just look at the wolf. Look for the wolf. And the analogy breaks down here. Sorry. So what you do is you look for other witnesses and if there's any physical evidence. So I didn't like, his method wouldn't have gotten him anything. I don't feel it just looks childish. He acted as though he had put Cohen. This was a trial with Cohen as a witness. This wasn't a trial. This was an investigation. That's what that hearing was for. So let's shift over to the entirety of the congressmen there. Think about what they were. Look at what everyone did. Now, granted, you got a lot of Democrats grandstanding. Not cool. You had a lot of you had a lot of Republicans grandstanding. Not cool. But let's look at what kind of grandstanding we saw. All right. Democrats, when they grandstood, they just decried Trump. It kind of sucked. I haven't seen all of the testimony. So Republicans seemed entirely Republicans seemed focused on crushing Cohen's credibility, which, as I've expressed, I don't think is a good strategy. What I do think is a good strategy is to investigate. If you need to defend Trump and you believe Trump is innocent, the best way to prove his innocence, not just in Congress's eyes, not just in Mueller's eyes, but in the public's eyes, is to be able to go through and disprove Cohen's claims. And you do that by asking questions about it. You know, they could have easily brought up the idea that perhaps Trump could have expected. It's hard, and the problem is I don't believe Trump's innocent, so it makes it really hard for me to think of ways you can excuse this behavior as innocent acts. But as someone who has spent 18 months believing Trump is innocent and professing his innocence, you would think several major Republicans would be able to say, well, couldn't it just be this? You could ask questions that try to poke holes in that testimony. You could try to poke holes in the evidence that Cohen provided. They didn't do any of. They could have asked for. They themselves could have asked, who's going to corroborate this for you? They could have, dismissively asked, who's going to corroborate this for you? Where can we find more evidence? None of that. None of that. They didn't do any of that. That's what's striking. They didn't do any of that. They attacked Cohen, which suggests that they had no care for why Cohen was there. They have no care for investigating his claims, and moreover, I don't think they have any care for. It's more than just investigating his claims. They don't have any care. They don't believe that Trump is innocent, and I think that's the striking takeaway I get from that hearing, is they don't believe that Trump is innocent. They believe that Trump is guilty, but they are so mired in the need to have to be the power players in politics that they need to protect Trump, because if they lose Trump, they probably lose everything. As much as Pence is a staunch conservative with, actual values, actual conservative values, and can actually operate the levers of government, Pence isn't going to get any of them reelected. Pence might not get reelected. Pence might manage to motivate a massive turnout on the other side. The thing that was missing in the 2016 election, allowing Democrats to gain the presidency. There are some big, and given that the Democrats hold Congress, Pence might not even be able to put through his Christian conservative, hyper Christian conservative agenda. He might not be able to push that through before he gets voted out. So there's a lot of, he might not have any better effort now that they don't control all of government. And there's a lot of question there. There is a lot of question there. Let's see, you go through. I can't see any other reason why they wouldn't at least go, do you have anyone else? AOC did this amazingly. She picked up several threads that might not have been clear from her comrades, was taking those notes, was making sure that specific questions got answered. And she specifically focused on questions of, you know, she establishes that he knows that he states that he knows that financials are a problem, or if he does not, he knows, who know that he wouldn't be surprised if that was the case because he was doing it while Michael Cohen was involved. And then more particularly, she focused on questions of where can I find corroborating documents and where can I find corroborating witnesses. This is important because his statements as a liar cannot be trusted. However, Weisselberg, Pecker, everyone else he mentioned, I know those two were two of the ones that repeatedly came up. These two, they're all, they don't have the credibility problem, right? Well, maybe Pecker, but they don't have the credibility problem of having been convicted of lying to Congress. So now they're all, they can now provide corroboration. Also, she has now laid down groundwork for subpoenaing tax returns, banking records, any financials she needs from Trump, because he's laid out, no, there is a massive amount of fraud that goes beyond anything in the president, that goes back decades, this financial fraud. And so she now can investigate those things. She's now laid a groundwork for those things to be investigated, and if they play out, those investigations can be the basis of an impeachment, of indictments of Trump or members of his organization or even his family, any number of things. We move on from these from last week to I think it happened really late last week, but district attorney announced wasn't going to he or she, I think it was a female. I don't even remember catching the name, but I heard a report on NPR that a Sacramento shooting of a black man by two police officers in his family's backyard. They aren't going to pursue it. And let's assume I accept the reasoning that his cell phone was a gun. I'm sorry, I've never even seen a flip phone that looks like a gun. I really don't think this guy did not have anything that looked like a gun, but okay, you don't hold it like a gun, but okay, they thought his cell phone was a gun, and so they opened fire in a residential backyard. Okay, they fired 20 bullets. Both of them unloaded one clip. This is probably the greatest excuse for why we shouldn't have high cap mags. Because apparently, once they pulled the trigger once, they just kept pulling the trigger. They didn't stop, but here's the thing. There weren't 20 hits, there were 20 hits on Jerome, which was far more than was likely necessary to stop him from shooting a gun at them. Or There were a lot of misses. And that means there were bullets going into a residential neighborhood. And even if they hit him, there was the potential for through and throughs which went into a residential neighborhood. And yes, it was at night. So there is unlikely to be a lot of people around. I'm not gonna try to say for the children, oh, they could have hit children. They were unlikely to have hit children. I can admit that because of the circumstances of the of this specific shooting. But if they could see him well enough to hit him, there is a very good likely you've got people in. You could have other people in their backyards. There are adults here. You could have adults in their backyards. I don't know what else to say. That is the reason it wasn't that they lethal force, even if you grant that lethal force was warranted, they used overwhelming lethal force, which suggested a different motive. Because you do not fire your entire clip into a guy 5 feet away in a residential neighborhood at night unless, by God, your goal is to kill them. And damn anyone in the area. They are clearly negligent in their duty to protect, if not this man, everyone else in the area. It was, not to mention the fact that and the NPR report didn't seem to discuss this. I believe the person in question wasn't the person they actually were looking for. And I'm not sure why the NPR report hadn't mentioned it when I was listening to it. I think I may have cut it off because I needed to come and do a hot take. But the NPR report, the police thought they were chasing a man who'd been breaking windows, but and then he was spotted by helicopter. But the problem is there was a loss in between A and B, and so when they went into hot pursuit of this of the perpetrator, they were pursuing an innocent man who had every reason to start running when people with guns told him to stop in the middle of the night. If we are to believe that a cell phone looks the presence of a gun is enough to justify 20 rounds being fired into his body or into the surrounding residential area in a desperate attempt to stop him. I mean, 20 rounds? Guess what? That's 20 lives you potentially were snuffing out. And granted, the circumstances don't necessarily suggest that was likely, but that's only because of how late it was. Would they have done this in broad daylight if there was a barbecue on the other side of the fence? I fucking hope not. But then that doesn't justify that means they probably shouldn't have been doing it in the middle of the night. If it is justifiable to say that any threat to an officer's life someone who is supposed to be putting their life on the line that is part of their job description is they will have to encounter armed and dangerous individuals. But any threat to their life is justification for overwhelming lethal force that could potentially injure multiple civilians in the vicinity, because you really don't need to unload your entire clip to shoot someone. That's not how you should be trained to fire a weapon. Were these people certified to even wield weapons with that kind of reaction? I don't know. But so, if that is a justified response, so is his. There are people in this country who will pretend to be cops. One of the YouTubers I follow pretty regularly, Leonard French, a copyright attorney, actually had this happen and was giving us updates on the case of the guy who had someone pretend to be a police officer, and try to extort him. You can't know, and this is dark, and the cops went in aggressively. From everything we've heard, they went in aggressively, and so this man ran. That is kind of a natural response. It's not just fight, there's also flight. We have two responses here. And so, you know, and I don't feel this was justified. Everything I've heard about this doesn't make any sense. You tell me that it was justified because because the officers thought he had a gun, but that doesn't justify the response they gave, which is 20 rounds. So what about this confrontation justified unloading their entire clips in a residential area? And the answer is nothing, and this isn't a conspiracy. This is just a bunch of people who really should not be in uniform, and really should be charged, if not with manslaughter or murder, with gross negligence. Not because someone died, if that's the way you need to go, but because what they did, the amount of force they used, put lots of lives in danger. Their negligence could very easily have led to multiple deaths, and not just one. And the fact is the union is gonna keep them involved because it's not bad apples. We had a case recently where a supposed bust of a cocaine distributor turned out, the evidence was based on a purchase by a CI, a criminal informant, who didn't exist. The drugs were just pulled from the center console of a cop's car, and none of the other, nothing that they took in was what they were able to seize from the dead homeowners, was what they were there for. It was legally obtained firearms and, you know, small amounts, personal use levels of some drugs. And yes, that's bad, but that wasn't a death sentence. It didn't justify a death sentence. It didn't justify the injury of 4 other cops. But there were lies, and there were a lot of lies at every step of the chain, because everyone knew no one was going to call them on it. It's the same here in Sacramento. Black man was breaking windows. Oh, there's a black man walking the streets at night. Let's go kill him. Oh, his cell phone looks like a gun. Sorry, a 9mm does not look like a Nokia. A 9mm does not look like an iPhone. A 9mm does not look like a Razr or a Motorola. I'm talking about the old classic flip phone designs that everyone got because they were pretty cheap. Back when you had a lot of different design choices. And I say that meaning visually. I'm sorry. Yes, there are a lot of different Android phones, but they all look pretty similar. There's nothing striking about them. You know, the Razr was cool because it had this very striking visual design that was different. Um, uh, so, but none of those phones look like guns. I mean, maybe there was this one phone that, like, you could tap it and it would just flip out. I guess if you held it, you could have something that was kind of like a gun. But last time I heard about that phone was 2008. I suppose this guy still had one of those phones, but they were known. I mean, both my brothers had them. They stopped the mechanism which held them closed. Wore out pretty quickly, and it was very hard to not kind of just tap it and have it come out. You started to fidget with it, which would wear it out even faster. So I imagine that wasn't, that phone wasn't gonna make it 10 years. So I don't know. I don't know what they could have seen that they're like, gun! But then again, it's night. So I guess maybe they might have misseen something. Of course, then again, it's night. Maybe they should be more cautious. Maybe, they should have erred on the side of not murdering everyone in the area. 20 shots. Anyone who's been trained on a gun, you're shooting 1 or 3 round. Maybe you shoot in 3 round, 3 round bursts. But even then, I don't recommend it. Not if you're trying to. If they shot 20 bullets before he hit the ground, that was just wild. That was What did they have? Did they have a revolver and were they fanning it? I mean, I don't know. That is a lot. How do you put that many rounds into a guy before he dies? Before he falls? Before it's like, all right, you got him. I fired 9mm handguns. It it baffles me. Even with the training to hold yourself steady, like, you don't just lose. If you've lost count and fired 10 rounds without realizing it, you had no control. You should not hold a weapon. I'm sorry. Hot take. Holy shit, bad decision. All right, I'll talk to you all later.